usually more focused at the top of the ticket.
All I remember is getting lost en route to somewhere in Southern Virginia and having no idea where I was, but seeing Chancellorsville both coming and going and knowing there's a lot of battlefields around. Seb Gorka, what does Mike Pence need to do tonight to help the president?
I think he has to, be himself and channel the style that he used so incredibly effectively when he was the person briefing the nation and the world really during the coronavirus White House briefing. So he is still the head of that task force. Whenever he was in the driving seat, he did a masterful job as an old radio pro that he is and a former governor. And I think he just has to, deftly as he can, demonstrate that Kamala Harris, there's no there. There's no ideological center. She's been an opportunist her whole political career, and just use the events of the last 4 months especially to tie the Democrat Party to the extremism we're seeing on the streets of Baltimore or Portland and Seattle. So he just has to remind the American people that the Democrat Party of Scoop Jackson and JFK is dead, and it has become a radical party.
Ed Morrissey, the mission set for Vice President Pence?
To be the adult in the room. I think that this is Mike Pence, right? This has always been Mike Pence. This is in his DNA. He's in control. He's very disciplined. He has, as Seb says, he's got a great speaking style from his time on the radio. Knows what he's doing. He's got a masterful command of policy, and I think that he is going to be very strong in presenting and defending the Trump administration's accomplishments. You had a Washington Post column about this today, Hugh. And he's also going to be the guy who is going to be best at parrying some of the attacks that you're going to hear from Kamala Harris, especially in healthcare. I'm expecting her to be very heavy on healthcare tonight.
One of the leaks out of Salt Lake City, Sebastian Gorka, is that Mike Pence intends to paint Kamala Harris as a California extremist representing the future of the Democratic Party. It's not hard to do because everybody who comes out of California for the National Democratic Party is extremist. But what policies do you think they would hit upon specifically to paint that picture?
That's a tough one. I think in general, just the increased control over the citizens of California. The latest guidance I was discussing on my show today, Governor Newsom, who happens to be Nancy Pelosi's nephew, has issued actual pictures, guidance, that when you're in a restaurant, you have to put your mask on in between bites. So, just pointing out the absurdity of what California is, and also how people are fleeing that state because of overtaxation, crime, homelessness, you name it, even mismanagement of forestry. So it's not a hard sell in terms of the concrete issues. The question is tying Kamala to that albatross.
So, Ed Morrissey, I want to ask you both before we run out of the first segment. I also have written this is the first GOP debate of 2024. It might be the last vice presidential debate of 2020, the first one, but it's the first GOP debate of 2024 because the vice president is also talking to Republicans. What's the message from him to them?
Two things. I think first off, I think he is going to stress continuity. He's fully behind Donald Trump's agenda, Donald Trump's more populist approach. Remember that Pence kind of came out of the fiscal conservative wing, and so he's got to make that sale that he is the guy who can pull both of those wings together. I think also he's going to project strength and leadership here in a way that I think will make Republicans very comfortable moving forward after 2024.
Now, Seb Gorka, I knew Mike Pence as a congressman, as the guy who came down and pulled up a chair and sat with my teenage son and chatted him up like a good congressman. He was the chairman of the Republican conference. You knew him as vice president in the West Wing when you would see him roaming around as an advisor to President Trump. How did he strike you in the West Wing?
I have said it publicly, and I'll say it again on your show, Hugh. He is perhaps the most honorable politician in D.C. today, career politician. That's why I publicly lambasted George Will the last time I saw him after an absolutely disgraceful column he wrote about Mike Pence as having no honor. This is an individual who took time always when I bumped into him to ask me substantive questions. This is an individual who has understood the role of a vice president and to be the steady right hand at the tiller to Donald Trump, who isn't a politician, wasn't a politician, and still isn't one today. So Mike Pence, I have huge admiration for the man. He's not the bull in the china shop that was needed when it came to the swamp, but he's definitely the man you need at the right seat of Donald Trump, the president.
Let me read you all some numbers. Arizona, Biden +2. Wisconsin, Biden +5. Ohio, Biden +1. Pennsylvania, Biden +5. Pennsylvania, Biden +13. Florida, Biden +4. Florida, Quinnipiac, Biden +11. Iowa, Biden +5. Nevada, Biden +6. Here's a relief. West Virginia, Trump +18. What happens to these numbers, if anything, tonight, Ed Morrissey, if Mike Pence has a good night?
Again, I'm not sure how much impact this is going to have on voter choice. I'd also say that these numbers that you're reading off are being taken in an environment where it's almost impossible to predict who's actually going to turn out. And you have to remember that only one side of this election is doing traditional get out the vote, voter contact, door knocking, the type of thing that almost always drives turnout. This is not something that I think you're going to see in polling. I don't think polling is designed for the environment that we're in a pandemic and in this situation. So I don't know if it's going to move the needle tonight, but what I think it will do with Pence up on stage is I think it will give Donald Trump supporters even more reason to feel confident moving forward that they're on the right path.
Seb Gorka, Mike Pence is going to be met in the audience by Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, of course, the first openly gay candidate for president, and his husband, Chastain, will be there. What do you expect Kamala Harris to say about that to Mike Pence, if anything?
I don't know if she can. This will be the big challenge for Kamala to rein in her cackling, aggressive self that we've seen already in various interviews and the stage performances. I think she has to be very careful, given that the president has just come out of the hospital and is still recovering from the coronavirus. So to go use the old blasphemy, the old heretical and the old libelous charges against Mike Pence when it comes to attitudes to homosexuality may be not the card she wants to play tonight. But if I can respond to the numbers you read to us, let me give you three numbers in response. Cato Institute, more than 70% of Americans are not prepared to openly talk about their political proclivities given the current cancel culture. So that means polling is like phrenology, it's a dead science. Secondly, to Ed's point, the Biden campaign started knocking on doors less than 7 days ago. The Trump campaign already has 2.3 physical, actual, real 2.3 million volunteers. That is the largest number of volunteers in any campaign in U.S. history. And then lastly, here's a poll for you. The month before the election, October 2016, the New York Times said Hillary Clinton has a 92% chance of winning. So much for polls in the age of cancel culture.
Ed Morrissey, we will be back with you after the break. Sebastian Gorka, thank you so much for joining us, America. This is the Salem Radio Network pre-election debate special, talking with you and with our Salem host, Sebastian Gorka. Coming up after the break, Ed and I are going to take a listen to what the president had to say at the White House today. Don't go anywhere. It is the Salem Radio Network.
Hey, Dwayne.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, inside the Beltway, hosting tonight's Salem Radio Network coverage on the vice presidential debate between Vice President Michael Pence, Senator Kamala Harris of California, number two to, of course, the Democratic nominee, former Vice President Joe Biden. I'm joined from Minnesota by Ed Morrissey in the Twin Cities. Ed, I've known Susan Page for a long time. She is, for many years, the Washington bureau chief of USA Today. She's 69 years old, author of many books, widely respected in the industry. What do you expect out of her tonight, and what do you expect happened to her after the Chris Wallace debacle, as I call it?
Well, first off, I expect that Susan Page, I've met her a couple times myself, Hugh, and I expect her to try to plow a center line, maybe a little bit better than Chris Wallace did the last time. I also think that she's going to have fewer difficulties with the two debaters tonight. So we shouldn't see too many problems arise where she's going to have to start trying to intervene to keep things moving along. But she's a steady hand here. I expect that there might be, there might be some quibbles from both sides about the questions that are asked, and I'd be very interested to see how these questions are framed. But I actually expect this to be a pretty much by the numbers debate tonight. I don't really expect a whole lot of bad behavior from anybody, any of the three people that are going to be on stage tonight.
I can remember back to 1984, Ed, when George H.W. Bush emerged from his match with Geraldine Ferraro saying, "I kicked her ass," and being widely and roundly criticized for that quip. That we're kind of past, but not past that. You still have to be very careful if you're the vice president on how you refer to Senator Harris, don't you?
I think so. And look, I mean, Mike Pence is the guy who understands that better than almost anybody else in politics. This is a guy who is very much a class act. He's never going to come out and say something like that. It wouldn't matter who his debate opponent would be. He will always be gracious because that's who Mike Pence is. Mike Pence is just a gracious human being. You know this as well as I do. Both of us have talked to him offline a few times. That's just who he is, and he's not going to change that persona. It's going to be a much different outcome tonight than I think we saw the last week.
I also want to predict, before I play for you a little bit of the president today, that we'll see the Mike Pence pause. The Mike Pence pause is well known in broadcast, which is 1,000, 2, 1,000 before an answer comes. The Mike Pence pause is the professional gathering their thoughts to make sure that nothing wrong comes out, correct?
Absolutely, and he does it all the time. It's very effective. There is nothing lost by a moment of silence while you make sure that you have the words right.
Eliana Johnson of your hometown is also known for the Eliana Johnson pause. Let's take a listen to the President of the United States earlier today addressing the nation on his return to the Oval Office.
Hi, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president, and I'm standing in front of the Oval Office at the White House, which is always an exciting place to be. I got back a day ago from Walter Reed Medical Center. I spent 4 days there and didn't have to. I could have stayed at the White House, but the doctor said, because you're president, let's do it. I said, fine. You tell me what to do, and I'm going to listen. These are great professionals. They've done a fantastic job. And by the way, not only at Walter Reed, all over the country, we have the greatest doctors in the world. We have the greatest nurses, the greatest first responders, law enforcement, by the way, incredible. Firefighters, everybody. They're just great. We have great people. This is a great country. But I spent 4 days there, and I went in, I wasn't feeling so hot. And within a very short period of time, they gave me Regeneron. It's called Regeneron. And other things too, but I think this was the key. But they gave me Regeneron, and it was like unbelievable. I felt good immediately. I felt as good 3 days ago as I do now. So I just want to say we have Regeneron. We have a very similar drug from Eli Lilly, and they're coming out, and we're trying to get them on an emergency basis. We've authorized it. I've authorized it. And if you're in the hospital and you're feeling really bad, I think we're going to work it so that you get them and you're going to get them free. And especially if you're a senior, we're going to get you in there quick. We have hundreds of thousands of doses that are just about ready. I have emergency use authorization all set, and we got to get it signed now. And you're going to get better. You're going to get better really fast. This is things that nobody even thought of a few months ago. The job that the scientists, the labs, everybody have done is incredible. Then in addition to that, you have various other drugs that help a lot, but these, I view these, I know they call them therapeutic, but to me it wasn't therapeutic, it just made me better, okay? I call that a cure. So I want to get these things done. So we have to get them done, we have to get them approved, and I want to get them to the hospitals where people are feeling badly. That's much more important to me than the vaccine. But on the vaccines, we have many companies that are in final stages for the vaccines, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, Pfizer, all great companies, but many of them. And we're going to have a great vaccine very, very shortly. I think we should have it before the election, but frankly, the politics gets involved, and that's okay. They want to play their games. It's going to be right after the election. But we did it, nobody else. Nobody else would have been able to do it. The FDA has acted as quickly as they've ever acted in history. There's never been a time, and no president's ever pushed them like I pushed them either, to be honest with you. But the FDA is approving things in a matter of, that used to take a matter of years. So we have these drugs, Eli Lilly and the others that are so good, but they are, in my opinion, remember this, they're going to say that they're therapeutic, and I guess they are therapeutic. Some people don't know how to define therapeutic. I view it different. It's a cure. For me, I walked in, I didn't feel good. A short 24 hours later, I was feeling great. I wanted to get out of the hospital. And that's what I want for everybody. I want everybody to be given the same treatment as your president, because I feel great. I feel like perfect. So I think this was a blessing from God that I caught it. This was a blessing in disguise. I caught it. I heard about this drug. I said, let me take it. It was my suggestion. I said, let me take it. And it was incredible the way it worked. Incredible. And I think if I didn't catch it, we'd be looking at that like a number of other drugs. But it really did a fantastic job. I want to get for you what I got, and I'm going to make it free. You're not going to pay for it. It wasn't your fault that this happened. It was China's fault. And China's going to pay a big price, what they've done to this country. China's going to pay a big price, what they've done to the world. This was China's fault. And just remember that. So we're going to get you the drug. It's going to be free. We're going to get it into the hospitals as soon as you can, as soon as we can. And you'll see some amazing things happen because we have, our military is doing the distribution. It's called logistics. And they deliver hundreds of thousands of troops in a matter of days. This is easy stuff for them. Our general's all ready. We're waiting for the emergency use authorization. And the drug companies have just made a lot of it. So hopefully this is going to be not just a therapeutic, it's going to be much more than a therapeutic. You're going to get better fast, just like I did. So again, a blessing in disguise. Good luck.
Regeneron, Ed Morrissey, Regeneron. What'd you make of the president 20 seconds of the break?
Very much wanting to show a demonstration of strength, very much wanting to show that he's in charge. This is classic Trump. No big surprise.
Classic Trump, exactly. Regeneron. If he doesn't win, I think he's going to work for Regeneron. Don't go anywhere, America. The Salem Radio Network continues on pre-debate night with Ed Morrissey and me, Hugh Hewitt, inside the Beltway. Stay tuned.
Ed, you're going to have to start this segment.
Okay.
Greg Clugston.
Okay.
We're here with Ed Morrissey, joined now by Greg Clugston from Salt Lake City. Greg, give us a fill-in on what is going on in Salt Lake City this evening.
Hey, good evening, Hugh and Ed, and
NBC.
welcome to the campus of the University of Utah here in Salt Lake City. We're in the beginning of this first and only VP debate between Vice President Pence and Senator Kamala Harris. And obviously, unlike last week's debate in Cleveland between the presidential contenders, we don't know the exact list of debate topics tonight, but we are sure that the pandemic is going to be front and center tonight. It's front and center on the debate stage itself, as you well know. Plexiglass screens have been placed between the candidates and also between the candidates and the moderator, Susan Page of USA Today. And it's shaping up to be a real conservative versus liberal expression of different views from these two candidates as how they would go about handling social policies and the crises facing this country right now.
So, Greg, what are you hearing on the ground there about what the? We were talking about Mike Pence's strategy earlier. Have you heard anything from from the spin room about what Kamala Harris's strategy is going to be? What it is that she's going to be focusing on?
Yes, they had members of both the Harris team and the Biden campaign talking to reporters earlier, and essentially, you're looking at Senator Harris. Even though she's going to be sharing the stage with the vice president tonight, she's not going to be going after him as much as she'll be going after the president and the president's policies, which the Biden-Harris team really believe are simply failed policies. And also the mismanagement, they argue, of the coronavirus pandemic. So I think we're going to see Harris link the vice president to the president and the administration's policies on that. At the same time, a Biden campaign senior advisor was talking to reporters today also and said that they expect Mike Pence to be a good debater, that he has a good track record of performances in these kinds of settings, and they expect that to be the case again here tonight.
Well, I think that they're going to have to lower some expectations for Harris here because Pence is very skilled at this format. He's a former radio talk show host himself. He understands how to conduct interviews and how to conduct debates, or conduct himself in a debate, I should say. Harris did not do well in the Democratic debates. She got clobbered by Tulsi Gabbard on a couple of occasions. Getting into this cycle really sort of flamed out. Is there any concern among people there that Harris is really going to have trouble standing her ground and making a good case here tonight? Or do they have some indication that she's figured out what went wrong in the primary cycle and has addressed it here for tonight?
Well, her team, as you might expect, is pretty confident about the preparations that have gone into place. She's been here in Salt Lake City since, I believe, Saturday in preparation for tonight. She got here over the weekend, and the vice president got here late on Monday night. And we're told by a White House official that the vice president participated in about 3 mock debate practice sessions himself. The president, if you remember, has over the last number of weeks has been pointing to Kamala Harris's debate performances back in the primary, and of course, she went on the attack against Joe Biden, who's now on the same ticket as her going into November. And so it'll be just very curious to see if how she'll address the vice president, whether she truly will go after him or really more likely go after the president and tie the two together.
Greg Clugston, Hugh Hewitt, I just wanted to ask you what the attitude among the media room is towards the coronavirus after being exposed to Kayleigh McEnerney this week. Is there a heightened sense of caution among the reporters yourselves?
Absolutely, there is. Not only here at the debate site, but back in Washington. And I've been talking with colleagues, and everybody's concerned because the White House is a hot zone right now. There's just no two ways about it. And because members of not just the administration, but also the press corps have become infected with this. And so we are obviously all wearing masks, and we have gone through the protocols here at the debate site, as we did in Cleveland. But it's just a little bit different this week, Hugh, I would have to say, because there is increased, concern about this because of the upper level Republican and White House and administration and military officials who have either been infected or are currently in quarantine.
Well, stay healthy, Greg Clugston. Thank you for joining us from Salt Lake City tonight. We will be back with more on the Salem Radio Network, continuing coverage of pre-debate warm-up. We will be joined by Mike Gallagher after the break. Stay tuned for Ed Morrissey and Hugh Hewitt as we close in on Mike Pence versus Kamala Harris on this debate evening show on the Salem Radio Network. Welcome back to Debate Night in America. It's Hugh Hewitt on the Salem Radio Network, joined by Ed Morrissey in the Twin Cities and Mike Gallagher, Radio Talker Mike on Twitter. Good evening, Mike. Welcome to the Salem Radio Network Debate Night program. How are you this evening?
I'm good. Got the popcorn out and ready to go. We're 15 minutes or so away, and it ought to be a pretty provocative evening.
You're really only 3/4 of Mike Gallagher because you've lost 60 pounds. So now you're only 3/4 of Mike Gallagher. But give us your 3/4 analysis of what is going on tonight. What are the stakes? What do you expect out of the vice president?
Well, what a showdown between, a conservative Midwesterner from Indiana and a radical liberal Democrat from San Francisco. But I'll bet even the president and CEO of the Nixon Library doesn't know who Abraham Lincoln's first vice president was. Who do you know?
Hannibal
Hamlin.
Okay, it was close.
You were close. You had a syllable more than I would have done if I had looked it up on my computer. Typically the vice president doesn't have the kind of spotlight that obviously the presidential debate does, but this is different. The vast majority of Americans have been polled that Biden won't make it through the first term, which is a sad but sobering sort of statistic. A lot of people don't believe that Kamala Harris, if Biden were to win, would in fact be the commander-in-chief. And so I believe Americans are going to watch this as if Kamala Harris could become the president very palpably, and this gives it a whole different level from past vice presidential debates that we witnessed. I mean, I don't think a lot of Americans will even remember the vice presidential debate, of 2016, who Mike Pence debated last time, but they'll remember this time.
Vanilla Tim Kaine. Ed Morrissey, talk to me a little bit about what Michael just said. Dare the vice president approach in any way, shape, or form the vice president's health?
I think that it's going to come up with Donald Trump's health first, and then I think Mike Pence will feel, open to discussing this. Yes. I think it's, these two are vying to be one heartbeat away from the presidency, so that the topic in general will be there. Who's most ready to be the next commander in chief in case the unexpected occurs. That to me is, I think, always a legitimate grounds in terms of framing the battle of the bottom of the ticket. And again, emphasizing that, as Mike just did, most voters probably don't rest their votes on this. This year is a little different.
Mike Gallagher, how tough does Mike Pence get with Senator Harris? There is the Geraldine Ferraro precedent of George H.W. Bush being criticized for being too harsh on her after the debate was concluded. What about tonight? Have things changed sufficiently in however many years, 36 years, that it no longer matters?
Well, particularly after the very contentious Trump-Biden debate, I suspect both candidates tonight are going to be sensitive to going over the top and showing a real edgy side. Mike Pence is a radio guy. He cut his chops in talk radio. He spent time in our business, and so he's a really effective communicator. And Kamala Harris is a smart cookie too. I mean, she's not, she's a former prosecutor, and prosecutors debate. You know that, Hugh, as a well-respected attorney. So, I believe it's going to be a classic sort of showdown again between people with really clashing values and wildly different backgrounds. It ought to make for a very entertaining evening. It ought to be provocative, and it's going to give people pause. Ed makes a good point about the president's health. I mean, I don't know that we certainly have never seen a president hospitalized less than a month before, an election. And so, the same prism that people might be watching Kamala Harris with, they could be looking at Mike Pence and saying, if the Trump-Pence ticket wins, is the president going to be healthy? Now, he's been tweeting up a storm, and he cut this video today, and he looks and sounds like $1 million. He is the Energizer Bunny, as you always say, Hugh. But
Do we expect, I'll ask you both, with you, Ed, starting, do we expect the vice president to bring up Kamala Harris' attack on Joe Biden from the first debate about his Delaware segregationist past?
I think Mike is going to go. I think Mike Pence is going to go there, just as a way of setting up a punch here, because Kamala Harris's response to this, and I know Mike's covered this too, was that, well, it was just a debate, and this was just an internal, discussion between Democrats on this. And Mike Pence's counter to that is going to be, so then therefore this is just a debate as well, and we can't take you at your word tonight. I mean, this is such an easy punch that I can't believe that they haven't already prepped Mike Pence to deliver this. Mike, do you think that he's going to go there?
I do, and that's the kind of those are the kind of talking points that I think he's prepared for. It's impossible to avoid that. It's also impossible to avoid Kamala Harris's truly radical record. This is a woman who's late-term abortion favoring. This is a lady who has had all kinds of radical views about health care for illegals and on and on. And so if Mike Pence can hone in on the real sort of shockingly radical, policies of Senator Harris, he'll do very well tonight, and he needs to. Listen, this is a weird. We're in kind of a weird cycle where the sitting president is, I think, at this point, according to all the polls, the underdog. And so
I think you're right, but I think Mike Pence has to punch at Joe Biden and almost ignore Kamala Harris and use her as a prop to say, Senator Harris, you have been covering up for Vice President Biden's segregationist past, his record of incarceration of African Americans, where we have signed the First Step. I mean, that sort of thing. I would just go right through her, Mike Gallagher, and try and pin the tail on him. Last minute to you, Mike Gallagher.
Well, I just respectfully push back a little bit on that, because Kamala Harris's record is really, really a very a juicy target for somebody who is, again, this sort of plain-spoken, serious Midwesterner. It's a big contrast between the two of them, and but listen, strategically, it might be very wise to go right at Joe Biden. He's at the top of the ticket. It just seems to me, of the two of them, realistically, he's probably more likable than she is, and so Vice President Pence may hone in on that and go after her record. But then again, hey, far be it for me to go after Mr. Hewitt and disagree. So
Mike Gallagher, Radio Talker Mike on Twitter. We'll give you a hard time tomorrow. Never Trumpers are always welcome here, Mike Gallagher. I'll be back to conclude this hour with Ed Morrissey. Go nowhere, America.
And because Tom Tillis knows that he is losing and knows that we are winning, he has now resorted to trying to make this campaign. I know.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. It's the Salem Radio Network debate preview with Ed Morrissey joining me from the Twin Cities. Ed, you've got a breaking news story on Cal Cunningham, the disgraced North Carolina Senate candidate who's been embroiled in a sex scandal this week. What has happened in that race?
Well, it's very interesting, Hugh. Apparently, the woman that he was exchanging sex with has confirmed that she had an actual extramarital affair with Cunningham. There's another woman who's claiming that she was having an extramarital affair with Cunningham in parallel. Apparently, the husband of the first woman was a severely injured veteran, combat veteran, who is now calling on Cunningham to withdraw from the race. He is very unhappy with this. The Army Reserve is starting an Article 134 investigation because Cunningham is a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. And if any of this took place while he was on active duty, adultery is actually a crime in the military.
Especially when it's between an officer and the spouse of a non-commissioned officer, then it's a very serious deal. And I'm sure North Carolina being a very military oriented. I'm curious, do you think that the vice president will try and steer any friendly fire to help Susan Collins tonight, or Cory Gardner in Colorado, or Martha McSally in Arizona, or your own Jason in Minnesota? What do you think? Does he try and help anybody over the line tonight?
Well, I think it would be in keeping with Mike Pence's character to do that, but I think he's going to have his hands full with Kamala Harris, and I think he's going to be focused on defending the Trump record. He's going to be focused on getting the Trump record out in front of viewers tonight. So you're going to hear him talk an awful lot about the same things that were in your Washington Post column today, Hugh.
Now, last bit. Mike Pence always liked to say he's a Christian conservative Republican in that order. I'll be amazed if he doesn't say it tonight, because I think he says it before he goes, that's his prayer. Remember, Lord, I am a Christian conservative Republican in that order. Help me stay that way before he goes to sleep each night. Is there evangelical support to be shored up tonight, Ed Morrissey?
I don't think so. I think there might be more of a play with Catholics. I think the evangelicals are pretty strong behind Trump already because of the radical abortion stances now that are coming from Joe Biden as well as Kamala Harris. I think that the aim right now between both campaigns is to try to woo more Catholics. And I think if there's any appeal on a faith basis, it will be to Catholics in this debate.
And my last point would be, I do think Mike Pence might find a way to name-check Senator Martha McSally in a tight race in Arizona by reminding people that she crushed Captain Mark Kelly in a debate last night, that David Perdue had, that Tom Tillis has banged Cal Cunningham around a couple of times, that Susan Collins took her opponent to the mat. Republicans debate, well, he might find a way to work that in. Ed Morrissey, we will speak afterwards with Mark Short from the Pence camp after the debate is over. And we'll talk to you, America. Now settle in and watch tonight's vice presidential debate between Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris.